right. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Cindy Schisler, retired Learning and Development Specialist for Wright State University, but I'm still there. I still teach in this College of Business. So that's what I'm doing. I live back and forth between here and Florida, and I can't miss fall. I just cannot miss fall, so I am back up here enjoying the fall weather and all the trees and watching grandkids play soccer and all that kind of good stuff. And then I'll migrate back down there eventually. But anyway, we'll hit briefly. I got 2 hours and I could do this all day. It's probably my favorite workshop I teach. But in just looking at what do we do to attract them, but what do we do to retain them? And we'll be hitting that just a little bit too. My goal is that when you walk out of here today, you will have some ideas, understanding of each other, and how you can, what everybody brings to the party, and not trying to choke them. Yes, so definitely. All right, I'm going to talk to you some. You're going to talk to each other, then talk to me some. Let's get going. So this whole started when back into the 90s, Schisler Corporation called me over at Wright State and said, oh my gosh, you have got to help us with these younger kids. They're lazy, they don't want to work. And this was Gen X they were talking about at the time. They don't want to work overtime. They want to leave. All this stuff. And we're going, huh? So anyway, going over there, doing assessments and doing a lot of research really started my interest in this. They were not lazy. They were willing to work. They just weren't willing to work exactly like the older ones were. You know, they wanted time off. They wanted work-life balance, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and we're going to talk about that. So just spending time in Schisler back when it was in Dayton, which really got my interest in the multi-generations, and obviously working at a university that piqued it too and gave me the opportunity for the research. So with that said, boomers, this is the most solid statistic I see. It does change, but the boomers are 1946 to 1964. Gen X was 65 to 81. These are birth years. Millennials 82 to 2000. And then I got Gen X because sometimes this year varies. This is the one I've stuck with. But right now they're saying about 95 to 215. That could change. But that's about the year that they were. Just a quick overview. I'm going to talk about the site. We're not going to spend time in group discussing them. I'm going to talk about them a little bit because they had a big impact on the baby boomers. That would be who your grandparents probably were. They were the generation that was born from 27 to 45. Current age is 75 to 93, and their population was about 47 million. We do not have too many silent generation in the workforce unless you work in academia, and some never retire. Maybe they should, but some never retire. So in that age bracket, I still work with quite a few people who are from the silent generation. Baby boomers, again, 46 to 64. Their current age is 56 to 74. Many of them are starting to retire. The younger ones hold a lot of the leadership positions in organizations. The current population, well, the population of the baby boomers was 78 million. At the time, it was the highest demographic group, and it had a huge impact on work life, society in general. Along comes Gen X, smallest demographic group. We'll talk about why in a little bit. 65 to 81. Their current age is 39 to 55 using my demographics. And obviously they're full force into the workplace. And 58 million. And then we got those millennials came hopping through. All right, 82 to 2000. Current age is 20 to 38 at the top. Again, you can give it a year or so. And the population, they surpassed the baby boomers. They're 80 million. So as we go through and talk about this, the impact that the baby boomers actually had on our life, our work, educational system, society was huge. Watch out because the millennials are hopping right in there. All right. Aren't you got any millennials in here?
I was born in 95.
95, you hit it. Yeah, I guess we never had to worry about you wearing your hair like that. No. But some of you exes probably remember that. Aren't you glad that's over? Yeah, gosh. Yeah, those bangs that stood straight up. And then move over because now we have Gen X. All right. 95 to 215 roughly, age 5 to 25. They are graduating from college. They are entering the workforce. They are your youngest workers. Population is estimated to be 86 million. All right, so it's just going to grow. Do you think they're going to have an impact on the workplace? Yes. So as we go through this, you think about the 80 million Ys or millennials, and then you think about the combination of this younger generation. Work, academia, everything is just going to end up taking a shift. By the time us baby boomers are retired out of the workplace, work life will look a whole lot different than it did when we all started. Even from teaching in my academic career, from the time I taught my first class in 1989 and to now, whoa, it's different. It's different. My students' expectations are different. Their attitudes are different. How they do approach work, how they approach school in general. And I'm not saying it's all negative, because it's not. They have some great ideas. But there's parts of it that are just different. And again, we'll talk about it. So what I want you to do, I want you to spend a moment at your table, all right? And I want you to just talk. Think about what you've seen at the workforce. What are some of the things that you might be interested in knowing that drove you to this workshop anyway this morning, okay? So what impacts, both positive impacts and the maybe negative ones, are you seeing from working within a multicultural workplace, all right? So I want you to chat with each other for a minute. For time, maybe I'll give you a good 5 minutes to throw some ideas around, and then I want somebody at each table being willing to throw out your ideas, all right?
Melissa?
What did you come up with? What were some of the topics that you had at your conversations at your table?
The differences is what motivates people.
Mm-hmm.
The motivations are different. When I was coming up, a good example is when you had a family and you wanted, your wife was going to have a child, the older officers then, so I got hired in '89, were like, that's your wife. You don't worry about that. Maybe get a day or two,
Yeah.
and they pressure you into coming
Sure,
to work.
she'll be fine.
And today,
Yeah.
it's weeks off, and if not longer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very different thing.
Yep.
I think priorities are different.
Yes.
Like being prompt. It's a big thing for police, officers being on time.
Yeah.
But they're more concerned about time off and using, when do I get my benefit and not the organization. So I think they think
Okay.
personally and not organization.
Okay. I will agree with that. Definitely. Anything to add to that, Steve?
I think your motivation as
Okay.
a supervisor, I think just expectations of what your work demand is, work versus why you're there. We had one of our new employees come up to us and said, "Would I have to work Christmas?" It was a serious question. And it was like,
I thought we were
The
Christmas
city
off.
closes down on
Every close, no crime on Christmas, nothing happens. That's right.
Put the drawbridge up and nobody could. No,
Yeah.
it's an expectation versus when I first started it was I worry about when I can take vacation. That's somewhere down here versus get my job done is up
Yeah.
here. And those I think
Yeah.
that's the worst.
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted. No, absolutely. It's definitely different expectations and different motivations. So, okay, Tony's going to present for the table. All right.
I think for the positives, I think there's a wealth of knowledge. You've got younger people that are just coming out of school that have kind of that book knowledge, and you've got the older generation that their book knowledge may not even apply anymore because the scenario's changed,
Right.
but they have a lot of experience.
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
Suddenly full irrelevant. There's him.
And I think one of the things we talked about is a lot of people talk about how diversity is a good thing when it comes to either sex or race or what have you. But I think it's really important also to talk about the positives with diversity and age. I think that's kind of
Yes.
missed out on a little bit sometimes. And I think for some of the negatives, kind of like what I'm sorry, I forget your name, but Steve. Everybody, the younger generation really is focused on family time, work-life balance, not wanting to work a whole lot of overtime. Come in, get the job done, go home.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the older generation is very much, I'm going to do my job and take
Yes.
family time and stuff like that second.
Yep.
And I think this isn't something we talked about, but it's something that I think is kind of funny sometimes, is I think the older generation is expected to understand how to work with the younger generation, but I don't think it's so much always talked about how the younger generation needs to learn to work with the older generation. I think it's just kind of expected because older is typically in more of an authoritative position, but I
Right.
don't think it's talked about and kind of understood how those relationships need to go both ways sometimes.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I am going to hit on that today. Yes, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody want to add anything, or did he get your list?
He covered it.
See why he was team captain there.
He's covered it. All right. What did you ladies talk about?
You know, it's interesting because we've got, you know, we talked about some examples in our office of how things are done, and you've got, typically you see your older generation is all about, you know, FaceTime and coming and sitting down at the desk, in our case, you know, getting the job done, working the 8 to 5 or whatever the set hours are, and we have an intern who is probably, she might even be a Gen Z. And
Okay.
she is a superstar, but she's not going to be content to sit at a desk. If we were to say, okay, here are your list of duties and sit at this desk and do this all day, she'd be out the door.
Right.
She is high impact, project, excited to make an impact and do things. And it's just lovely. I mean, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
To see her do this stuff. And I think for some of the, like our boomer generation, that's going to be, and it is challenging for them to go, well, wait, but she's not at her desk, or she's,
Yeah.
you know, this is hard, you know, but we've got to kind of shift the way we
Yes.
operate to allow for those types of things. So,
That sums up Gen Z pretty well.
Yeah.
It really does. And organizations are going to have to understand it's just work differently, and
Yeah.
they will do great. And like you said, she's already making a big impact.
Yeah.
But she's going to work a little bit different, you know? I'm a boomer, and I used to like to roam the halls of Wright State, you know, away from my desk, let me breathe, let me think, let me go talk to people, you know, so, yeah. All right.
One of the things we discussed was you can't pigeonhole someone just because they are
Right.
an age. One of our employees here, he was talking about a superstar. He is just that. I mean, there's nothing that he can't do or he won't learn to do if you need him to do it. I mean, he goes above and beyond. He forwards this work phone to his cell phone so he can still assist everybody. But, I mean, he's not even 30.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and to me, that's a very admirable quality.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when you have older people, sometimes they may not see that as, you know, who's this hot shot coming in and
just-
how they view things.
Mhm.
Fortunately, everybody loves our guy, but
That's good, yes.
Yeah, you just can't pigeonhole someone.
No, not all boomers are alike, not all Gen X are
Right.
alike, or millennials or Zs, or they're just not. So you can't pigeonhole everybody. So I want you to keep in mind today, we're kind of talking about an overall look at the generations. All right. We'll be getting into a lot of what you were talking about. Okay, so some generational impacts. Half the U.S. population is over the age 45 now. All right, so into the X's. By 2020, which is now, all right, half the workforce will be millennials as they're coming in. The oldest being 38, 39, depending what study you look at. 8 out of 10 boomers plan to work past retirement age. One thing we're going to find about the boomers, they are a driven to work. They're a hard-working group, and they're sitting here retiring, and retirement can be boring if you got nothing else to do, you know. And sometimes it's just, you know, just like to put time in at work. They may reduce hours. They may take another job, but they definitely. They're a generation that the term 60-hour work week was coined with, because they are. They're hardworking. 50% of teachers will retire in the next 5 years. All right, we're getting up there. And lots of my friends are retiring who are teachers. Boomers are now 53 to 74. We're retiring in large numbers. So we're taking this, and as me and Steve, the boomers in the room, start retiring out, we're going to be filled up by a younger workforce. Many organizations estimate that 50% of their workforce will be eligible to retire in 5 to 10 years. So thinking about the cities, the areas that you work, all right, in the next few years, if there could be large people retiring, that is going to create opportunity for new hires. And who are we going to hire, and what's it going to look like? There's going to be gaps too. If we think about it, sitting here, boomers, some Xers are definitely filling the leadership positions. And especially we're taking the boomers being the older population not retiring. Is there going to be a gap in leadership? And what are we doing, to train, develop, and grow the next group to take over? All right, that is something that we need to be asking ourselves. And just things like the trades, working in cities, we're so bent, and I know I'm a college professor saying this, but we're so bent on this 4-year degree all the time that it's not necessarily meant for everybody. I see it all the time. And what happened to the trades? Nobody's encouraged, Have you hired a plumber lately? It's a good job, and we have gaps here. So there's healthcare. We're talking about the younger generation wanting more work-life balance. There's definitely a gap in healthcare too, in individuals going into certain areas of medicine because they don't want to be a doctor and do some of the hours where they're going to have to be on call all the time. Things are changing in just how we look at work life. So what does it mean? It's going to mean competition for qualified employees will increase because you're all going to need somebody. Attracting and retaining employees will be essential. How do we attract these people now, these kids, the younger ones? And more or less, how do we keep them? We're going to get on it, some of the things that they're interested in, some of the things that you can do to build a career path for them. Both the millennials and Gen Z are interested in career paths. And I think they would stay at the organization longer, or as long as they feel like there's room to grow, things to do, different things. We will address that. That's a great point. It's a great point, Jody, because, what are we going to do? I remember training a private group, this is a few years back, and I will be honest, colleges, including the university that I'm at, pretty well told you that, go out, get in the world, get your first job, get your feet wet, stay 5 years. And if you're over there 5 to 7 years, you better be moving on because you're too long. You need to get the next step of your career growth. I see my niece doing that, okay? 5 years, her first professional job. Been here too long, off she went to somewhere else. Millennials, I would think, pretty well have bought into that. Gen Z verbally doesn't seem to be looking for that. We'll see. They're too young, the story's still out on a lot of them. But again, we will get into work life here. Somebody over here mentioned it, transferring the knowledge, I think it was Cody, transferring knowledge from the older to the younger employees is critical. Yes. We learn different things. The older employees have the experience. They put the time in. They know the job. Younger ones may be fresher out of college. They may have some new information, but they don't have the experience. We got to figure out how we're going to transfer this knowledge from the older to the younger.
When you've got that boomer who's been in this job forever, so they started their career and they take for granted all the things that they know.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get information
Yeah.
out of them because it's just so natural and so normal.
Yeah.
But to transition that to a younger person, that's really tough.
That's an excellent point. It really is. Back when the manufacturing was here, General Motors and Delphi, the university did a lot of work in those areas. And there were guys who'd work on a line for 20, 30 years. They knew if something was wrong by the sound of it. And how do you transfer that? That was from their experience and their learning and the knowledge they had gotten over the years. So figuring out how to transfer this. And also allowing the younger ones to have feedback on how to maybe improve some of these processes. I'll give you an example. I teach a high performance teams class. And the class is an organization and they get split up into teams and each team has a part to do to help run the class, all right? And a lot of it has to do with just classwork, feedback from other people, and they have to figure out how to keep track of different things. One of them is just doing feedback from the class. And probably about 4 times a semester, they sit down and give each other face-to-face feedback on how their time is doing. And I would have them write these sheets out, how old-fashioned, and they turn them in. this semester they have got these things online and somehow they go back and forth to each other and they compile to something to me and I'm going to have to be taught what they're doing before the semester's out. It's brilliant, but I don't get it. And so again, passing the experience along while building into it with some new technology. Yeah. And the worst thing that happens is if we're not prepared for our workforce leaving, then that knowledge hasn't been transferred. And I see that in organizations all the time. They're not prepared for the next step. Addressing the shortages in healthcare, skilled labor, and the trades. We talked about that. So, rhetorical question here I want you to be thinking about. So what is your organization doing to be ready for these changes? You know, what are you doing proactively when these other half of the boomers end up, you know, retiring out? We're going to spend some time, you're going to come into this, we're going to look at the generations kind of one at a time. I'm going to go over the silent generation. I'm just going to talk through this because it impacts the boomers. It really does. And impacting the boomers, between the boomers and Gen X, is where the social divide, if you will, came that really started the younger generation looking at things differently. All right? So, things that influenced my grandparents, all right, was like the Depression, World War II, Pearl Harbor. I can remember my grandmother talking about rationing things out. The stock market crashed. Social Security did start after, a little bit later on, the New Deal. Very much a nuclear family. Sometimes grandparents would live in the same household as adult children and grandchildren. They have a very disciplined, strong work ethic. I think we've talked about that already. Definitely believed in seniority. I start here. Cradle to grave employment. I start at the bottom, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to work my way to the top. And when I get to the top, I'm going to have the seniority, okay? A respect for authority. Did not mean they agreed with their supervisors all the time, but there was a respect for authority, all right? Respect for corporate history was definitely there with this group. Loyal. Pretty much a loyal. Like hopping down here, you know, we talked about cradle to grave employment. They like structure, they like procedures, they like to know what to do and how to do it. You don't buck the system, you figure out how you're going to work within it, all right, was kind of the idea of traditionalists in the workplace. So this is what I am going to do. I am going to divide the class, you're pretty well already divided, into 4 groups. All right, and I'm going to assign you each one of the generations. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on this because this is kind of where I think some of the aha moments on the differences of the generations come in. So I'll keep track of my time. I'm going to give you each a piece of flip chart paper. And I'm going to give you guys the baby boomers up here. And that was people, individuals born between 1946 and 1964. Okay, boomers. I'm going to give you to Gen X, born between 65 and 81. Okay. I am going to give you to millennials, born between 82 and 2000. And I'm going to give you Gen Z. That's what you can see where I was kind of looking around. Who might still have young ones? Gen Z, 95 to 15. All right. And what I want you to do, now I understand on Z, you might not have all of these down, but I just want you guys to spend a few minutes in making categories. What world events, what was going on in the world that probably impacted your employees, people you work with, during that generation, that era that they were born? All right, there will be some overlap, I do get it, but try to stick in those years. What was family life like? Education, how they learned, media, okay? What was work life like? What did they do for entertainment? Core values, we're going to talk about that, so you really don't have to address that one because we're going to get to it. And role models. All right, baby boomers, because everybody in the room isn't going to be able to read it, I need one of you to go through and talk about your list. And if anybody wants a comment along the way, you may.
For world events, we had the Cold War. It was the real baby boom, all the military veterans coming home, starting families. leaving the city epicenters, starting to get into suburbs.
Suburbs, yeah.
The nuclear family, practicing nuclear drills and how to protect yourself and your desk.
Yeah, I remember those.
The Korean War, introduction of rock and roll, and my favorite, color TV.
Yay.
Yeah.
Do you know what the first movie to come out in color was?
Yes. Wizard of Oz.
Yes. You love it's black and white, then it opens up to color.
Glorious.
Yes. Yes. All right, continue.
Family life, everybody had a stay-at-home mom. There was a very strict division between what dad did and what mom did. Mom stayed home, tended the kids, cleaned the house, had dinner ready at night. Dad worked. And worked on the cars and mowed the lawn. And those were the rules. You didn't get divorced. That was out of the question. We had simple entertainment. You made up games, playing with your friends, stuff like that. Marbles, yeah.
Marbles.
Education, trade schools. If you were privileged, you went to college. There was integration. Media. Everybody watched Walter Cronkite on the evening news.
Yep.
Yeah. Radio. Everybody listened to the radio.
Yep.
You read the newspaper for what happened. And some of the bigger cities would have multiple newspapers. They'd have
Morning and
edition,
evening, that's right.
Noon edition, evening edition.
Yeah.
And if you were one of the higher income families, you subscribed to the Saturday Evening Post. You need that to read. Work life. People stayed at one job. They'd stay at the same job. You worked your way up the ladder, and that was your goal to get to a senior position. You favored the company and not the employee.
Okay.
For entertainment, you read books. You'd go to the movie theaters. Maybe you'd hop in with your family to go to drive-in movies or your friends. You go on a family road trip with your mom and dad. Kids, get in the car. We're going for a drive. Yep.
Or a vacation with no
Or
air
vacation.
conditioning.
Yeah, no air conditioning. You roll down the windows. Core values. Your family was first. That's what came first all the time, and your religion.
Okay. Very
I had to
good.
put the other category in the back there, and I can't remember what I wrote.
Role models.
Role models. Role models, you had other family members, senior family members, your grandparents, your uncles, clergy, and maybe some other senior staff members at your company that you worked with, that you looked up to.
Yeah.
Those are who your role models were.
Okay. Very good. Okay, yeah.
I didn't mean to put it that.
Oh, sure. All right, good job. I'm going to pull in a few things that I had. I think they got them all. Economic boom, we talked about that. Also things that played into there too is Vietnam, civil rights, feminism. It also went over into Gen X. Assassinations, was another big one. You paid your dues at work, The consciousness movement started, so the baby boomers, it's almost split in half. You had the half where we pretty much followed a lot of what you're talking about, all of what you're talking about impacted the baby boomers. But we also had, in the mid-60s, I guess, the Woodstock, Summer of Love, all that, really, that consciousness movement started some change in how young people looked at the world or how they were raised or the values or whatever. There got to be some questioning, and a lot of it came tied into, why are we in the war? What are we doing here, in terms of equality? Why aren't women paid the same as men? All this stuff started asking questions, all right, at that time. Lots of competition. They were very competitive. Work was there. After the war, overtime was abundant if you wanted it, in a department, especially if you were in like manufacturing. When they came back from the war and manufacturing went back to making what it was making prior to the war, there was lots of opportunity and lots of overtime. They had high expectations, idealistic. They started maybe questioning a little bit, wanting some fairness, but the ethics and values at work were important. They were team-oriented. Again, organization, what can we do for the organization? It's not so much us, all right? Very organization-focused. So, good job on that. How'd they like to communicate?
Send me a memo.
Send me a memo?
Face to face.
Telephone, face-to-face sometimes, yeah. All right. Gen X. I need one of you to go through that.
So, Gen X world events, we talked a little bit about, and you mentioned the bleed over of women's rights. I mean, you start to see a lot more women in the workforce
Yes.
and things like that. 9/11 was a big thing.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, just in how the world changed. Family life, you know, again, we're breaking up that nuclear family. Lots of divorce. A lot of we don't really talk about this, but latchkey kids. I'm going to talk or come up with things as I talk through this.
That's fine.
A lot of people having children and marrying later. So
Yes.
it wasn't mom at home. You know, now you've got women in the workforce, so they're not like, that's not the golden prize anymore. From education, you know, we feel like there's a lot of, you know, we had a more traditional education, so lecture, sitting in a classroom, limited options, where nowadays, you know, you've got all the different options. From media, we went from low tech to high tech, so we went from the newspaper and getting your news from the newspaper
Yeah.
to the dawn of the internet and starting to get all of our information electronically. This phone is now everything, so we were
Yes.
kind of that generation that really started getting into computers and starting,
It started,
you know, all
yeah.
that kind of tech generation, the beginnings of it. Work life, you know, much more flexible and adaptable. We're open to change, so we don't have to just send the memo. We don't have to just pick up the phone. You know, there's a lot more going on there. Entertainment, I talked about, or we kind of talked about going from the theater to the couch. So,
Yeah.
you know, it used to be that
Yeah.
you would go to the drive-in or you'd go to the movies and it was a big deal. I can remember my mom putting candy in baggies and hiding it in her purse and we, you know, go to the movie theater. It was always such a big deal. And now
Yeah.
it's like, oh, what's on Netflix? So,
Exactly.
I feel like Gen X is a lot of transition. Core values,
Yes.
we talked about, you know, communication, contribution, work-life balance,
Yeah.
things like that. And we couldn't really, we had a tough time with role models. So
Yeah.
we
Okay.
left that one.
And we'll talk about that. There's a reason why you have a tough time with role models. They mentioned some of the role models. Role models, too, also with the boomers, back at that time could be respect for the president. It could be war generals, things like that. There were other people, you know, that came in as role models. Obviously, technology is huge. We started that. We had computers the size of our coffee tables, you know, it was huge. Watergate, there was an energy crisis. You guys remember when we had a shortage of oil and you got gas every other day depending on the first letter of your last name? Do you remember that?
Gas was 74 cents a gallon.
Something like that. Yeah, I know. It was low. Divorce epidemic, you talked about that. Things happened. One of the things, I'm going to tie this together. We had that recession, all right? And what happened was that cradle to grave employment. Your dad maybe didn't have a college education, didn't really need it, okay? Maybe went to work at an office, a corporation, maybe went into a manufacturing job, whatever, all right? And didn't have a college education, but climbed the corporate ladder and was doing really well, making good money, and life was good. And all of a sudden we had that recession back in the late 70s, early 80s, and Dad, who didn't have that college education, or maybe the extra technology or whatever it was they needed, found himself downsized or right-sized out of a job, and then struggled to find a job that economically would be hired for the same place because the education level wasn't there. Maybe he was in his 50s, you know, and you're looking at the new people coming up. It could be a really tough time. And women went back to work. Divorce became more accepted. There truly was about, they said about 50% of all marriages ended in divorce at that time. Latchkey children was a result of having to find daycare for them, okay, after school. So we're talking about this, and it was like, we get to the next generation, we're going to get to the millennials, and they're going, wait a second, Mr. Employer, my dad worked for you, and he worked all these hours, and he made a lot of money, but he was working overtime, and he never made it to my soccer game, or he didn't see my dance recital, or that boat he bought just sits in the garage because on weekends there's no time to take it out down on the lake. And Mr. Employer, and then all of a sudden you lay him off? Don't quite see me wanting to be in that same spot in life. And Mr. Employer, I'll work for you, but I don't really necessarily want to work all that overtime. I'll give you my heart for 40 hours a week, and I'm going to my kid's soccer game, and I'm going to that dance recital, and you know what? We're going to balance this work life with family out, and the boomers are going, what the heck? What are they thinking? That's not how you work. You work when we need you. I need you for overtime. This whole thing of trying to put mandatory overtime in came out, forcing people to work. And then we got this frustration in the workplace, and Gen X is saying, not so sure I'm going to do this. Does this make sense? This is where this gap started to occur, this generational gap. Gen X is huge in professional development, and we also had the big HIV at that time. Skeptics, definitely skeptics. Skeptical corporations, they're skeptics of religion, they're skeptics of lots of things. Work-life balance is probably number one, flexible workplace, and that is still true with millennials and Gen Z. They like startups, they like results. A little bit more self-focused rather than team-focused, because where'd that get my dad? Didn't get him anywhere. So I'm going to take care of me. Don't expect loyalty from the company, and I'll move on. Comfortable with change, because they've always had to deal with it. And this is the group that kind of wanted the work life, or the work life to become a little bit more fun. All right, kind of do some fun team things, bring things into work that are just not work related. Does this make sense? Right here, between the boomers and X, a lot of things started changing. And they called it the generation gap. That's what it was referred to, the generation gap. And as it heads into the millennials and Gen Z, a lot of things are changing. A lot of things are happening. All right, millennials. Who's got the millennials over here?
We did.
You got the millennials.
I kind of wonder if we missed the boat on some of these.
Oh, you probably didn't.
So just pretend with it. Play along.
Okay. All right.
Our world events, in Reaganomics, it seemed like that was the end of it at a different time and era.
Yeah.
And for the shift to the workplace, I think started looking different at that point and what your goals were.
Okay.
We had Desert Storm.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft.
Yeah.
Microsoft reared its head and technology became accessible to everyone.
Right.
We had the space shuttle exploding,
Yep.
which then kind of led to we kind of decreased.
Dropped off the space program.
Started seeing a lot more mass shootings, like within the schools and bombings and things.
Columbine had a huge impact. It really, school was no longer a safe place, and it was a safe place prior to that. At least you
Right.
thought it was. It was.
Family life, by this point, both parents were out of the house working if there was two parents,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of led to, on our core value, we said it was acceptable to be a single mom.
Mhm.
You know, women didn't care about getting married now. It's not as taboo.
Right.
Let's see, what else do we have? More broken families with a divorce rate, or families that never had mom and dad.
Right.
So,
Yep.
Education, technology and computers. I think Jody mentioned when she started teaching at the time, there were 3 computers in the classroom. You had to rotate to
Yeah.
get them. Now everybody kind of carries a Chromebook.
Kids take their Chromebooks home from school. Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
Wi-Fi is accessible pretty much to
Mhm.
everybody. Media, you used to get your media on the news, on the TV, but now we're seeing, at this point, people are going to Facebook, Instagram.
Well, and it
on
was more local
social.
news.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Right.
Right here, Channel 7
Right.
or whatever.
Entertainment, we started seeing tapes, CDs, VCRs,
Right.
records,
Records.
fading away.
Yep.
I know I showed records to my grandchildren. They're like, "What is that?"
What is
I have
that?
no idea.
I have a funny story.
Yeah.
I was in a kindergarten classroom and we had like a big record, and one of the kids was like, "That's the biggest CD I've ever seen." It was about this era because that's when everything was like a little CD.
Yeah, that's right.
So-
That's good. Oh, it's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, that's the biggest CD I've ever seen. I was Martin. Yeah, it is.
Oh,
but-
it is.
You know, they came out that this year records outsold CDs.
Really?
Really?
This year records have now outsold CDs.
Welcome COVID.
Should have saved all your records, you guys.
And entertainment, you can get entertainment anywhere now. You
Yeah.
don't have to go to
Right.
the movie theater. We have
Right.
Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah.
Whatever else.
Yeah.
And that's about as far as we got.
Okay.
We got to the core values.
Values.
It was just the family values were not that of what the baby boomers were.
Right.
So, and I think on role models, one of the things we went back and added on family life was that grandparents are raising children now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ties over to role models. So the grandparents, instead of mom and dad, are becoming more role models.
More, okay. That's a good point. That's a good point. My children are on the older end of millennials. They don't even have cable. Why pay for cable? You can get Netflix, you can see news on your computer. I mean, why spend the money? Which drives my husband crazy because he wants to watch a sporting thing, but they pull it up on their computer. So all right, let's talk about some of them. You did a great job. Diversity is also another huge point. They are raised with diversity in diverse situations, and they like it, they expect it. All right, so they will go as far to saying, and especially Gen Z, if there is not enough diversity in your workplace, that could be a turnoff for them. They're very civic-minded. At this point, millennials were the largest group that put the most hours into volunteering for things that were important to them. Very people-oriented, people-minded. 9/11 they were the me generation. They were accused of being overindulged, and I might agree with that. 2 parents working, there was more income, there might be more disposable income, all right? And everything kind of focused on the me generation. Remember seeing those little signs, baby on board, or my student is an honor student at ABC school, or something like that, your bumper sticker on the back of your car. We've done it, Those were the millennials. They're used to change. Universe is fast changing, they're used to it. The iPhones, they all have one. Facebook, Twitter, and internet, millennials will sit on Facebook to some degree. Gen Z does not. Facebook, their parents use. So they focus more on Snapchat, Instagram, and some of those others, but never Facebook because grandma has an account on it. That's just not cool. Columbine, age of immediacy. This was also too because of social media and because of the internet. You didn't have to wait to get information. It's at the snap of your fingers. It really is. They never had to get up and change the channel on the TV for their father. You had remotes. You could drive through the drive-through. You get your money out of the ATM machine. Everything was fast. And I think the older generations got frustrated because of the expectant, let's do it quick, let's get it done, results oriented, but they never lived in a world really that wasn't. So it's not like they're trying to be impatient. This has always been life for them. So I want you to understand this, doing projects, being involved, getting things done quickly is just how they were raised. It's just the life they were in. Helicopter parents, who knows what helicopter parents are? Yes, yes, helicopter parents. HR could probably tell stories about them. I have a friend in HR who had a young interviewee whose mother came with him.
Oh my God.
And I had a parent call me and wanted to have a discussion with me about their child's grade. This is college, because she did not think that her little snowflake could possibly have ended up with a grade he had. And I said, by law, I cannot talk to you about your child's grade, but if your child is willing to come with you, we can. And she must have dragged him by the collar, and then she saw all the absences, all the papers not turned in, and he really did earn that D. I'm going, you gotta be kidding. Have you guys ever had parents coming?
You just hear a lot. I haven't personally,
Okay.
but yeah.
One of my friends actually had mom show up. Helicopter parents, just hovering enough, maybe just little too hands-on at times, and maybe not giving the space that they needed. One thing I will say about the millennials, okay, they like the teams, productivity is key, don't waste my time. Do not call me into a stupid meeting, you know. Do not call me into a stupid meeting. If the meeting's important to me and to the organization, I will go. Otherwise, text me, email me, drop by my office. One thing about communication, they get a rap for being very tech savvy, which they are, and I do like to communicate that way. It's probably been about 10 years ago now. I did a survey among Gen Ys in the hospital settings throughout Dayton. And it was fun doing the research and getting all the information. And yes, while I like to text over email, that they still like face-to-face. If that was an important meeting, they do want to be included. They do want the face-to-face communication. So don't think they never want to talk to you personally. And the same thing with Gen Z. You know, they do want to talk. They just don't want every little thing done that way. Again, good at technology. They're performance driven. I really don't care, Tony, that you've worked here 35 years. I'm 23. I just have I got my college degree, and really, I can work circles around you. I know the technology on this. So this corporate ladder, who cares? You know, raise me up, okay? Raise me up. That's definitely the thought. Now, pay for performance. Let's not wait to get the raises. This is my job. This is how well I'm doing. I'm doing it well. I need to be paid for my performance, not for how long I've worked here. And multitasking is something else. They say they can do well. The research has shown that nobody can do a job perfectly multitasking with others. Something's going to suffer a little bit on that. Let's spend a moment here. So think about this as you're hiring millennials. They like flexibility in their jobs, all right? They like the time off. For them, time off can be almost more important than more money, all right? They like a very social environment. They like working in teams. Some of the extremes examples are Google, Amazon, where they have break rooms. They're loaded with food and ping pong tables and just things like that, where you can be social and entertain yourself on your breaks. They like recognition, all right? They want career development. You know, I like working for you at your police department. If we have a path to career development, I might stay here. A clear path that you can show me what I can do. Tuition reimbursement's always a good thing. They like the technology for remote openings. Understanding not all groups or workplaces or organizations can do that. But the ones that can, if that's there, and not all millennials want to do it either. So don't think they're all dying to work from home, because they're not, okay? Work-life balance opportunities, flexible and creative HR policies. Look at your HR policies. I struggled with the university on this one when I was there. Here we are, university, and we still have HR policies that seem rather baby boomerish to me. In allowing flex time, allowing work from home, allowing 4 10-hour work days. When I directed my department down there, you know what? If you can figure out how to make it work, I will support you. So a lot of my team did 4 10-hour days. And I made it up to them when they couldn't be there, you know, just to make sure that somebody was always there. It worked. It worked. It does not work in every situation. I understand that. So looking at your policies, are they flexible? are there parts of them that have been written years ago and we've never really looked at that are antiquated? They're going to catch that right away. Some of these 8 to 5 work guidelines, some of the policies were created years ago when people kind of, coming into more structured workplaces. The people that invented some of these policies have long been dead. So we need to be looking at some of these. Gen Z. Let's hear from the Gen Zs.
Oh, you read that.
Okay.
Gen Z, several events. We have 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Basically the overtake of social media, school shootings, and of course, it's all about technology,
Yep.
technology.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Family life, there seems to be a lot of distraction because of technology in family life.
Yeah.
The lack of personal interaction in family life due to technology.
Yeah.
But you do see that, parents have to plan more for family vacations just because of a lot of stuff that's going on.
Right.
It seems busier,
Right.
much busier. Education, it's all basically online learning or over Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
and they learn through peer interaction.
Right.
So
Yeah.
media, the biggest thing I would say out of media is TikTok nowadays, Snapchat and Instagram.
Okay.
I mean, I think Instagram are going to be called old now.
Yeah, it'll
Instagram
start,
is
right.
old.
Yeah.
Work life, a lot of them want to work from home. They know how to separate work from home. They want the flexibility, and they want basically work life too. Now I think it kind of brings it back to COVID. I know it's not on there, but they're kind of the essential person, the people working in the essential personnel with COVID-19. If you look, most of them are in retail or working at your grocery stores or at your restaurants. So I think they're kind of big on that side of the work life. Entertainment, their phone. Phone's the biggest entertainment they've got. Of course, YouTube, Netflix, and on-demand. Everything is right
On
there at
demand.
the
Right.
tip of their
Again.
fingers. They can get it right here, right now. Core values. I think their values are influenced by their parents.
Sure.
They value diversity. Their values are basically they're home more. You see a lot of them more at home nowadays because of technology.
Right.
Their core values are set by divorced or single parents. So you can see their values are determined on basically their parenting, basically.
Okay.
Their role models, musicians, sports, and of course, Tony's Cardi B.
Oh, Cardi B.
If I can add one
Gen
thing
Z.
Sure.
that I just thought about.
Yes.
Talking about the on-demand with the entertainment, I think that blends a lot into work life, and I've heard this in various circles where the younger generation goes into the professional field and they want to be chief of police within 3 years. They want to be the city manager.
Oh, yeah.
They want to be the CEO, but they don't want to do any of the things required to get there, up to and including the time spent to get to those positions. They just want to be awarded that,
Yeah.
from the start, which
That is what I hear from my organizations a lot. Do you agree with a lot of, you being the youngest one in the room, what is your sense here on the millennial Gen Z type?
No, I agree with a lot of it. I mean, I think
Okay.
I think a lot of, especially dealing with the education and the technology, I think a lot of that is going to be the changes that we see from generation to generation. It's only going to be sped up by COVID with Gen Z. They're all of a sudden they're forced to do technology with everything, and they're forced to, this is their only mode of entertainment right now because they can't go out. So I think, post-COVID, you're going to see a huge shift in the way the world operates once they start coming of age and start taking over some of the millennials and some of those positions. So I agree with everything
Okay.
that's on there, and I see it in my own life.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
I want to say something about education too. I do, and I hear a lot because my son's in high school about kids going back into trade schools, not going to college because they don't want to come out with that huge hefty
Right.
loan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of how the workforce is with COVID's going, so they're going to go to trade schools So you see a lot of them going back that way instead of going to college.
Right.
And they talk about going out and just getting a job for them to pay for college. So
Yeah.
they're realizing that benefits out there,
Yes.
and maybe I need to go get a job, have them pay for college, and then I'll go.
Yeah.
You know, so you see a lot of that.
You do see more. Gen Z, probably younger millennials and Gen Z are definitely more focused that way. Gen Z, from right now, from what they're saying, obviously they haven't been in the workplace that long, seems to want a stable work environment where they can have a career path and grow. They want it to be within the organization itself. Finances are important to them, financial security. Things are so expensive, and if you're going to college, you do have these huge debt when you come out. My grandson did the same thing, went to college a semester and said it's not for me, and is headed off to trade school. It just kind of makes sense. And also too, we're looking at all the technology, the changes in companies and how we shop. My kids don't go to Kroger's, they order it and pick it up. It's like, Mom, really, why would you go into the store, Mom, when you can order it?
That's funny.
Because I'm old, I like to go to the store.
That's funny that you say that. My dad, I'm a caregiver to him, and my dad is 69, and he's legally blind. He was a truck driver his whole life, worked for himself too.
Okay.
He's an owner-operator. He didn't want to answer to anybody.
Right.
So we pull up at Kroger's, and he says, I just can't believe there's that many lazy people in the world. I said, what are you talking about? He said, look how busy this is.
Yeah.
I said, Dad, not everybody is lazy. I'm
Yeah.
on time crunch here.
Time crunch, I know, I know.
But he just can't believe that people are that lazy.
That they just couldn't go to the store.
He needed new tennis shoes. I said, well, I can order you a pair right to your house. Well, you gotta try them on. They don't understand.
No, they don't.
They don't
Amazon just delivers to my daughter's house all the time. Yes, Doug.
So I'm on the edge of Boomer and
X's, yeah.
And just this past summer during COVID, I discovered Amazon.
Amazon Prime.
Time.
Yes.
I
Yes.
would literally on the weekends, I would go, okay, I gotta go to Target, I gotta check there, you know, different places. And a young lady that works with us was like, "What are you doing? Try this, please." You know, put it off. You know, I finally did it reluctantly, and oh man,
Changed your life, didn't it? Yes. Yes.
Fantastic.
It is. And if it doesn't fit, you can take it back at Kohl's or the UPS store, you
I don't
know?
have to leave my house ever again.
You don't.
hey, that's another whole problem.
That's another.
I mean, now you got
Ex-
stores where you can just go, like Kohl's, like you said, grocery stores, Kohl's, you order it, you go, they'll have it out and bring it right out to your car.
I
You
know.
don't even have to go in.
Absolutely. So the impact now of those of us who still like to touch and feel everything, what's them all going to look like 10 years from now? That's exactly it.
You know, and it's interesting too, there's a big push towards shop local and trying to, you know,
Right.
as like the younger generations start to become more community minded, that's going to come into some massive conflict, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, because like you, it's like, ooh, Amazon, like it's so convenient, but at the same time, you're feeding the big monster,
Uh-huh, right.
you're feeding that big conglomerate. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, that feels icky though. You know, it's convenient, so it's like, how do I balance convenience with doing the right thing and
Yeah.
supporting my local community? And I
Yeah.
think we're going to see, you know, some of that tension.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way until after I come down from my high of seeing a package on my front, ripping through it like Christmas morning, and then
I know.
maybe order something else. Then I'm like, oh.
And don't you love it? They
Poor
send you a
Target.
picture of it sitting on your porch.
Yeah.
You can't wait to get home.
And
I
there's
know.
also the hidden benefit of after I get it, and they're still saying product's a little slow. It may be coming in the next couple days. I'm like, will I get two?
Oh my God. It's slow. I know. I know. I get it. I'm hearing you. I just discovered it myself. My kids put pressure on. Some of their influences, I had to laugh. Doing some research, they called it the Great Depression of 2008. Truly, I don't know if it was a Great Depression, how we tend to view one, but it did impact families. There were layoffs, things like that. Diversity inclusion is huge. Again, like I said, they might bypass your workplace if it's not. political and cultural milestones influence them. The Obama election, the first black president, politics, you know, they look on cultural causes and looking at trying to accept all. So gay marriage, the Me Too movement, this has all made a big impact on this generation. They're more tech savvy than any other generation. This is the very first generation who all their life has always had everything pretty much based on technology. You guys talked about it, Snapchat and Instagram are their top choice of social platforms. Your job needs to be integrated into some type of social platform. They need to be able to look you up, see what you're about. Contrary maybe to some of the millennials, older millennials, maybe they didn't know much about your organization when they interviewed. This group will know. They will know. They're looking for job security and growth opportunities. They really are. So this is how can we provide those for this influx of coming new employees. They're going to look hard at your ethics and your social impact. What kind of footprint do you have in your community in terms of social responsibility? What are you doing for others? They're very others-oriented. What do your ethics look like? They are going to look at reviews. They are going to check everything out online and will make a determination many times if they want to work for you based on some of these things. All right? They definitely want to work for organizations where they feel like they're putting good into the world. Millennials. And you know what? Let's think about it. A lot of these things I've talked about today, we all want that. None of us want to go to work at an organization that we don't feel like has these things in place. Again, diversity, focus on financial stability and responsibility. Not so much millennials, if I'm passionate about the job, I'll do it. They may be willing to work for a job they're not quite as passionate about if the benefits are good and the pay is good and the security is good. Independent, they're not so team-oriented. I wonder if part of that is from this culture we have where I can sit by myself on my phone or my laptop. It's an interesting question, I think, for what communication is going to look like. Some of my younger millennials have said, communication sometimes is a little hard for me. Or sometimes I may feel awkward in groups, probably because they're not communicating as much. Or as the workplace is taken over by Gen Zs, will everybody just communicate like this and it won't make any difference? I don't know. They're very competitive, they're very open-minded. They do want to learn from you as managers. They do want to learn from you. They want to be coached. They want feedback, all right? And not once a year. They want it all the time. They're focused on the authenticity, transparency. They want to be able to come to you and have conversations with you. I spelled this word wrong. I'm so sorry. They're entrepreneurial. Many of them are looking at starting their own companies while they're working in a secure job. It's just like having a couple things going at once and very focused on education and learning. So what's this saying for companies? As we're looking at the younger ones coming in, what's our diversity look like? Are we going to provide them with the training? Are we going to give them opportunities for training and development, for personal growth? Are we going to set a career path that they can work toward? Again, not everybody is going to be competent enough or qualified enough to be police chief. You know what I'm saying? It's just like some people are never going to be able to be a top management. That skill set just isn't there. So when providing a career path, you also can't give false pretenses because some people are never going to get there. It's just not going to happen. Definitely define success differently than us baby boomers or even X or even some millennials, older millennials. Older millennials, let me tell you about them. They've kind of grown up a little. You know, they're looking at things more realistically. Their time is equal in value to money. All right, I give that to millennials too. Will pursue other rewards for their work. time off being one of them, flex time. The company corporate letters become irrelevant. It just does not matter. That is never going to be a drawing card for them. Those days are kind of gone, unless they really want to become a captain or a chief, and then they know they're going to have to work it out. View their predecessors' experience as a warning, not a roadmap. Gosh, I got to stay here for 25 years before I'm going to get up to this. Nope, think I'll go somewhere else. They don't value the rules of management, motivation, and reward the way we did. They look at them differently. So, okay, great, Cindy. So what can we do about this? We need to turn to understand what's important and valued by each generation when establishing a recruiting plan. What attracts a boomer is going to be different than what attracts a Z, but I want you to understand that boomers are starting to look at some of this going, this isn't really a bad idea. I like flex time. I like days off. All right. So again, just to break it down, boomers like loyalty, financial security, positive work ethic, an organization that cares about their careers and contribute to the organization. Gen X likes a stable organization, but they want flex time. They need child care and elder care benefits they're looking for, a work-life balance, incentive plans. Gen Y, they want to be recognized for their individual contributions within a team. This is an important one for them. Work that's productive and meaningful, all right? Innovative technology also goes with Gen Z. If your technology, and I would put this for both of these groups, isn't up to date, they cannot take a job with you from that. And think about it. We go online, we look at things. If somebody's got a crummy website, I judge them too, Even doctors now, you go on a doctor's website, they were one of the last ones to kind of get on the bandwagon with this. And you'd go look at your doctor's website and there was nothing there, going, I don't want to go to them. So a lot of judgment is made by what your technology and your websites look like. Continuing education, they want that. They want to be able to voice their opinions. Flex time, big. Again, diversity goes with both of them. They care about other groups and formal volunteering, same with millennials. Financial security is a little bit more important for Gen Z. Feedback from employers and growth opportunities. What's my career path? What's my road map? Flex time. And they're going to look at you that your actions over your words. If you say you're going to do something, are you going to do it?
It's funny because I'm in Generation X and being open to change. I mean, like all the stuff, even from the baby boomers to the Gen Z, is something that like I have taken into my own experience and I enjoy having, I mean, I still like continuing education and flex time. And so it's funny, us being open to change, you just see that we're like so adaptable to all that. Like I'm not closed mind. Teamwork, I love working in a team, but I also like working by myself too. It's just, it's funny how you see all of it compared across the board.
Absolutely. Back baby boomer influences and their parents' influences was knowledge-based workforce. So typically, let's go back until like after World War II, manufacturing and jobs were booming, and we had a very autocratic type workforce at that time. You had the boss and you had people working for you. So we had the boss at top, we had the worker bees, and basically the boss made the rules. He kind of told you what to do. You came into work. You really didn't ask for a lot of questions. You kind of did what you were told. So, Pictionary, what are these? People. Good, Doug. And what are the people missing? Heads. When you check your head at the door and you don't bring your head into the workplace, what are you missing? You're missing your brain, and our brain brings what with us? Knowledge. What else? Yeah, your beliefs, your values, experience, creativity, cool haircuts. Yes. Yeah, you're bringing all that. So what happened is, a guy named Charles Deming probably in the 70s, came up with this whole idea of working together, being in teams, that share experience, share ideas. In the American workplace, that's the stupidest thing we ever saw, and he went to Japan, and the rest is kind of history, how Japan's economy grew. It was probably into the 80s when we're going, okay, maybe you were onto something. And the whole idea should be at work, you got your employees at top, you have a boss at the bottom, and there has to be a balance of this. It isn't totally one way. You understand that. But you have a boss saying, what do you need from me? What can I do for you? And you're taking the values, you're taking the experience, you're taking the knowledge, you're taking the creativity of your workplace, and you're putting it together, all right? Huge impact on the boomers over in there, and it's just kind of carrying out. People want to be involved with their jobs, all right? Some of the things to keep in mind is all generations do share some of these motivators. We all want to be recognized for our talents and our passions. We all want some kind of continuous employment. We all want opportunities for promotion. Mentoring relationships is huge, and I'm going to spend a minute talking to you about that. Again, we just talked about make sure your social media includes what's important to each generation. Look at how you use it. Look at your website. They need to be date to date, and they do appreciate face-to-face communication, so don't think that's not true. Here's a couple of things we have found that are important in terms of your HR, in terms of just hiring and recruiting in your departments, is encouraging strategic relationships, especially important with the young ones coming in, Gen Z coming in, or a new person coming in. Traditional mentoring, when we think about it, is where a more senior employee mentors a newcomer, all right? And that's important, that's needed. One of the things some organizations have been doing, that I've been working with, is reverse mentoring. Reverse mentoring flips experience and positions the more junior person as a mentor in certain situations. So I may be coming into the police force, and Steve, you might be mentoring me on a job, but I can mentor you on that new software program.
Well, in police work, oftentimes the field training officers who you put new people with are younger people.
Okay.
Because they have the current knowledge and practice and what you should be doing, and not the bad habits you've developed over years.
Okay.
So that's a good example for us.
It's excellent, and it's one that works. So what happens as a new employee, a young person, I come into the organization and I am asked, I'm being mentored, but I'm asked maybe would I be interested in mentoring someone else? What's the benefit to me as a new employee?
What makes you feel needed or wanted?
Right. Also, to enhancing engagement through accountability, delegation improves communication. So if I have delegated a job to you, we are going to have to communicate about this and give feedback. That's huge. And effective delegation conversations allow younger workers and the newcomers to the organization to bring these new insights they have and experience autonomy early in their career. So it's a win-win for everybody. So this is another big one. Rhetorical question, what can you do? Just some things. Make sure you have an organizational culture that encourages employee decision making. We're not over there anymore. We're on the flip side. Offer learning and development opportunities. I had somebody in an organization say, if I spend money on training and development, what if they leave? And my response was, what if you don't and they stay? I'd rather have a well-trained employee. I mean, I've had to preach this over at Wright State. So you've hired somebody and they leave. Wouldn't you rather your employee leave and they've had a good foundation at Wright State University than a negative one, and they can bring value to the next organization down the road? Coaching and mentoring programs, they want this. They really do. Offer work-life balance programs to meet employees' need at every life stage. Okay? Develop change management programs. These are the things you can incorporate where you can into your HR policies, into your hiring, that's going to attract the younger workers who are basically are coming up being the workforce of our future. It's here. It's here right now. Final word, in case you're worried what's going to happen to the younger generation, it's going to grow up and start worrying about the younger generation. That's what happens. The Gen Zs will say, oh gosh, how are they ever going to get a job? How are they ever going to do this? It all works. We all grow up, and I guess I want you to understand that bottom line, We have differences. Boomers are different. X's are different. And I think in talking about X's, we can understand the Y's and the Z's more. But we really do all want the same thing from work. We all do. We may approach it differently. We may have different ways of thinking how we should do it, but we all want the same thing. So bringing the strengths and knowing the strengths, understanding the strengths of your employees, what can everybody bring to the party? Everybody has something to bring to the party. And focusing on strengths, there's workshops now out on Strengths Finders. There's a lot of types of workshops out. I'm not big fans of all of them. That is one I am. And just understanding what everybody can bring to work, despite differences. All right, thank you very much. You're a good group, good group.